In the first week of July, the Eagle Valley spent over $4 million trying to stop a mountain from burning down. And at the exact same time, roughly 160,000 tourists willingly drove their cars directly into the smoke.
Yeah, it is a staggering paradox to really wrap your head around. I mean, you have the ultimate environmental red alert happening right next to, the ultimate recreational green light.
Right. Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We're jumping straight into a community that is currently walking this crazy razor's edge between explosive tourism and extreme environmental limits.
Exactly.
And we've gathered a stack of local sources for you today. We're looking at everything from front page stories in the Vail Daily to those grassroots community bulletins on vailychat. And we're really trying to get a real-time pulse on the Eagle Valley as of July 6, 2026.
Yeah, and our mission for you today is to basically decode what actually happens when a valley operates at absolute maximum capacity. Because mountain towns like this one, they frequently serve as a microcosm for much broader societal tensions.
Oh, for sure.
What we're seeing right now, it isn't just a quirky local news roundup. It is a highly concentrated case study of what happens when the sheer volume of humanity collides with the harsh realities of nature and, well, the intense corporate battles that always seem to follow.
Yeah, and that collision was honestly on full display this past 4th of July weekend.
Yeah.
So let's start with the humanity part of that equation, because from Thursday, July 2 through Sunday, July 5, an incredible 163,500 vehicles passed through the Eisenhower Johnson Memorial Tunnels on I-70.
Which is just a massive influx of people. They're moving into a highly constrained, geographically isolated corridor in a very, very short window of time.
It is. But here is where my jaw kind of dropped looking at our sources. Despite that massive number, this did not actually break records.
Right.
Wait, how is that even possible? I mean, 163,500 cars in a single weekend sounds mathematically impossible for a mountain pass. Why wouldn't that break a traffic record? Have we just, completely normalized this extreme level of congestion?
Well, it's less about normalization and more about the physical limits of geometry, honestly. We have essentially hit the ceiling of what that infrastructure can process.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, you literally cannot physically fit more vehicles through those two-lane tunnels within a 72-hour window. It's a bottleneck.
Oh, wow. So it's literally just maxed out.
Yeah, exactly. But you are right to point out the normalization aspect. We have accepted a volume of baseline traffic that, say, 20 years ago would have been considered an absolute crisis. We've induced demand to the point where maximum capacity is just, called Thursday.
That is wild. But okay, this normalization becomes legitimately terrifying when you factor in what else is happening.
Yeah.
Because in stark contrast to everyone sitting in traffic with their mountain bikes and coolers, there is a very real emergency unfolding.
The Willow Fire.
Yes, the Willow Fire, burning just west of Leadville, and it just exploded. Our sources say it grew by 900 acres overnight into Sunday, July 5.
And that rapid 900-acre spread is exactly why understanding that traffic normalization is so critical. The blaze has prompted new evacuation orders, and the fire suppression costs, as you mentioned, have already surpassed $4 million.
I am really struggling to understand the logistics here. How do you even run a $4 million fire suppression effort when the only highway in and out of the region is essentially a 160,000 car parking lot?
That is the exact nightmare scenario for emergency planners.
Oh.
When peak tourism perfectly overlaps with peak fire season, the friction is just immense. I mean, consider the mechanics of it.
Right.
You need to rapidly evacuate residents going one direction while moving incredibly heavy, slow firefighting equipment in the other direction. You need to coordinate emergency responders, establish staging areas, ensure supply lines.
And you just can't do that if tourists are gridlocking the roads trying to get to a trailhead. It's like throwing a massive 160,000 person house party while the kitchen is literally on fire.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. The infrastructure is stretched to its absolute breaking point before the emergency even officially starts. So an overnight spread of 900 acres isn't just an environmental crisis. It exposes a massive glaring vulnerability in the region's infrastructure.
Man, that structural vulnerability is so fascinating. Because it seems like that exact weakness, aging infrastructure and safety concerns, is being weaponized right now in a totally different arena.
Oh, absolutely.
It isn't just environmental friction, right? We are seeing intense human corporate friction over who gets to control this landscape.
Yeah. Because when a region is this profitable but simultaneously this constrained by its infrastructure, The stakes for controlling its future become astronomically high.
So let's unpack this corporate battle,
Yeah.
starting on the macro scale. According to our sources, we have Matthew Prince, right? He's a tech billionaire who actually grew up in Park City, Utah. And he is currently running a highly aggressive, very public media campaign aimed at buying the ski area out from under Vail Resorts.
Yes, that's what the local reporting is showing.
And his primary stated reason for launching this massive campaign, he claims it's about safety.
That is the narrative thrust of his media push, yeah. He is highlighting alleged infrastructural decay and basically framing his potential takeover as a rescue mission for public safety.
Okay, I have to push back hard on this. I'm trying to imagine how this actually works in the real world. If I want to buy my neighbor's house, I don't get to just run an ad campaign complaining about their loose floorboards until they hand over the deed.
No, you definitely do not.
Right. So how does a tech billionaire running media ads about safety force a massive publicly traded entity like Vail Resorts to actually sell? Is this a genuine concern for skiers, or is this just like a hostile corporate takeover tactic dressed up as public interest?
It is almost certainly the latter, and the mechanism behind it is really important for you to understand. Because you're right, you can't bully a neighbor into selling their house. But if your neighbor is a publicly traded company, you can engage in what is essentially an activist campaign.
Okay, break that down for me.
By loudly and publicly highlighting safety or infrastructural aging, which, again, are the exact vulnerabilities we just talked about with the fire and traffic, you apply immense public pressure.
So you spook the shareholders.
Exactly. You weaponize public sentiment. If you can convince the market, the local politicians, and, the skiers themselves that the current ownership is neglecting safety, you devalue their brand equity.
Wow.
Yeah. You make it politically and financially uncomfortable for the legacy corporation to hold on to the asset. It's a way of creating leverage out of thin air.
That is brilliant and a little terrifying.
It is. And
But-
what is so striking about this, if you look at the Vail Daily sources, is that this macro-level billionaire battle perfectly mirrors a fight happening right down the street on a municipal scale.
You're talking about the Concert Hall Plaza property in Lions Head?
I am, yeah. This coming Tuesday, the Vail Town Council is scheduled to review a highly controversial redevelopment plan for that exact property.
Hold on. For those of us listening who aren't city planners, when the sources talk about a legacy footprint and redevelopment plans for a plaza, what does that actually mean? Are we just talking about ripping out some 1980s brickwork, or is this a bigger deal?
Oh, it's a much bigger deal. A legacy footprint isn't just the physical bricks. It's the zoning, the height restrictions, the entire economic purpose of the space. Concert Hall Plaza is an aging, decades-old municipal space.
Right.
The debate is really about whether to preserve that original scale and aesthetic or to tear it down and let new, highly concentrated capital reshape it into something much larger, more modern, and frankly, inherently more commercialized.
So it's basically the exact same phenomenon as the billionaire ski resort battle, just in miniature.
At their core, yes. You have aging legacy properties colliding with modern economic realities, whether it's ski lifts or a 1980s plaza. These are intense power struggles over who possesses the authority to dictate the valley's future.
Who gets to pull the strings?
Right. Do the longtime locals get to preserve their town's physical history, or does modern capital get to optimize it for maximum financial return? Both Prince's campaign and the Plaza debate are absolute flashpoints for this exact tension.
It's wild. It just feels like this valley is this hyper-commodified ecosystem where everything is up for grabs. I mean, billionaires are maneuvering for the mountain deeds, developers are fighting over the plazas, the traffic is endless, the forests are literally burning, and yet people actually live here.
Right, they do.
Like, while all these massive tectonic external pressures are pushing on the valley, there are actual residents trying to just live their normal lives.
And this brings us to a really crucial sociological concept, which is community resilience. When the macro environment is highly volatile and everything is commodified, you look for the micro institutions that remain stable. You look for the third places.
Third places, like not work and not home.
Exactly. The spaces where community identity is actually forged and maintained.
Well, nothing says third place quite like a local pizza joint. And our sources from vailychat highlight a story that honestly feels like a total breath of fresh air compared to all these corporate takeovers. Marco's Pizzeria in Edwards is officially celebrating its 32nd year in business.
Which, in the context of a high-end resort town, 32 years is practically a geological era.
Seriously. Most restaurants in these towns, they flip their concepts every 3 years to chase whatever culinary trend the tourists want.
Yeah.
But here's the detail that I absolutely loved. Owner Marco Estep still takes every single order using pen and paper.
Yeah, that stood out to me too.
There are no tablets, there are no QR codes taped to the tables, and the local paper notes that he incredibly remembers the name of every single person he writes down.
It sounds like a quirky, nostalgic detail, but sociologically, that pen and paper and that memory for names, it is a profound grounding tool for a community.
How so? I mean, it's just pizza, right?
Well, think about the environment we just described. It is a transient, tourist-heavy economy where everything feels temporary. Seasonal workers come for a winter and leave. Tourists stay for a week. The ownership of the resorts is constantly in flux.
Yeah, that's true.
In an environment of constant dizzying churn, an institution that refuses to change for 32 years becomes the literal glue of the community. It provides psychological continuity.
It's like radical hospitality. If you live in a town where 160,000 strangers are flooding through your grocery stores and roads every single weekend, just being recognized must feel like an anchor.
Precisely. Having your name remembered by the person making your food reminds the local residents that they live in an actual functioning town, not just a resort amenity designed for out-of-state wealth.
Yeah.
It is a subtle but very powerful pushback against commodification.
And we are seeing that exact same generational grounding in the local sports scene, too. The sources note that the 10th Mountain Lacrosse team just won the varsity boys division at the annual Vail Lacrosse tournament.
And how many years has that tournament been running?
31 years. It's the 31st annual tournament.
Again, we're seeing that exact same timeline, 3 decades.
Which means the kids playing in that tournament today could easily have had parents who played in the exact same tournament in the 1990s.
That is what we call the generational infrastructure of a community, because the billionaires and the tourists, they provide the capital. They pay the taxes. But the 30-year-old pizza joints and the local lacrosse tournaments, they provide the actual cultural fabric. They are the reason the town remains livable for the people who actually run it. The nurses who staff the emergency rooms, the firefighters tackling the Willow fire, the teachers in the schools. Without Marco's Pizzeria and the lacrosse tournament, the town just hollows out.
It's the difference between a place you visit and a place you belong.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of long-term commitments that shape the town, our sources also brought up a major transition happening this summer. It marks the end of a very significant era for the high culture anchor of the valley.
You're referring to the Bravo, Vail Music Festival.
I am, yeah. Anne-Marie McDermott is officially stepping down this summer. She is ending her 16-year tenure as the artistic director of the festival.
And 16 years at the helm of a major cultural institution is a remarkable run anywhere, let alone in a mountain town.
He really is. But I have to admit, when I first read this, I was a little skeptical.
Why is that?
Well, how does classical music shape the DNA of a ski town? When you and I think of Vail, or when the listener thinks of Vail, we usually think of adrenaline, right?
Yeah.
Skiing, mountain biking, maybe lacrosse. A classical music festival just sounds like a niche luxury for the ultra-wealthy. How does an artistic director actually impact the broader community over a decade and a half?
It's easy to assume it's just an elite niche, but that overlooks the function of art in a hyperactive economy. It acts as a vital counterweight. McDermott's 16-year tenure basically proves that the Eagle Valley isn't solely a physical playground for adrenaline and sports.
Okay, I can see that.
Over a decade and a half, you don't just book concerts. You cultivate a dedicated local audience, you build long-standing relationships with world-class orchestras, and you establish an expectation of artistic excellence.
So she basically validated the town as a deeply established cultural hub, not just a sports resort.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the broader picture we've been painting today, arts and culture are just as vital to a town's resilience as its economic engine. A robust art scene provides a space for community gathering that isn't purely transactional.
Right. You aren't buying a ski pass. You are sharing an aesthetic experience.
Yes. And when an era like McDermott's comes to a close, it forces the community to reflect on how much they actually value that cultural dimension. And more importantly, who is going to step up to carry it forward into a rapidly changing future?
Because the future is definitely coming fast. It really all comes back to balance, doesn't it?
It does.
So let's zoom out. What does this all mean for you listening right now? If you look at the Eagle Valley on July 6, 2026, you are looking at a place operating at absolute extremes. You have a 900-acre wildfire stretching emergency resources to the breaking point, while at the exact same time, 160,000 cars are pouring through the mountain tunnels for a holiday weekend.
Yeah.
You have tech billionaires waging aggressive media wars to leverage control of the ski resorts, and town councils fighting over the future of legacy plazas.
It is an ecosystem under immense constant stress.
But beneath all that noise,
Yeah.
beneath the millions of dollars and the massive crowds, you have a 32-year-old pizzeria taking orders by pen and paper. You have a local lacrosse tournament entering its 4th decade. You have a classical music festival saying goodbye to a transformative leader who spent 16 years building a cultural counterweight.
It's a town trying to hold on to its soul while the world tries to buy it.
It is. And why should you care about any of this if you don't live in the Eagle Valley? Because this isn't just a story about a ski town. If you live in a town that has suddenly been discovered by out-of-state wealth, you've probably seen this exact plaza debate happen at your own city council.
Definitely.
You've probably sat in that normalized, soul-crushing traffic. This valley is a perfect case study in how communities everywhere are trying to navigate rapid expansion, harsh environmental realities, and the desperate fight to preserve local heritage.
And it leaves us with a crucial, somewhat uncomfortable question to consider moving forward. We've talked a lot about the power struggle between local resilience and billionaire capital today, but there is an elephant in the room, and that is climate change.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
What happens to this dynamic when the snow stops being reliable or the fire seasons become a year-round reality? The billionaires fighting over these deeds are holding highly vulnerable assets. If the ecosystem collapses, transient capital can just sell and leave.
Right, they can just write off the loss.
They can. But the local pizza guy, the lacrosse coaches, the people whose entire generational identity is tied to that specific valley, they can't just leave. So when we ask who really owns a town, we also have to ask who is going to be left holding the bag when the climate bill comes due.
That is a chilling thought. The capital is transient, but the consequences are permanent. So, the next time you find yourself at a massive house party and you realize the kitchen might literally be on fire, take a look around. See who is frantically trying to buy the house, who is running for the door, and who is quietly standing in the corner holding a notepad, making sure everyone's name is remembered. That's our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us.